The CGA Tour, a podcast unlike any other. Now your host, Calvin Alexander.
Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour. As always here, I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander, and on this episode of the podcast, I'm joined by the one, the only, the Jake Carlson. As almost always am when we talk about Oklahoma State football, basketball, baseball, and even some other topics from time to time. But Jake, I would say how's it going? But you know what? Oklahoma State won against West Virginia at home. Yesterday in basketball. Of course, there's some more stuff going on here in the world, and I do want to mention that first and foremost here. Thoughts and prayers, of course, are with Damar Hamlin and the Buffalo Bills, as well as the whole NFL. So I want to talk about Oklahoma State football. So we're going to record the podcast today, of course, but depending on when you're hearing this, hopefully all is all right with Damar Hamlin as well. But currently recording on Tuesday, January 3rd at around 4 o'clock Pacific. So want to just kind of get that out there. Anyways, Jake, what'd you think about the bowl game? You know, we played Wisconsin. What was a week ago now? Seems like just a very distant memory that I've tried to forget about.
Yeah, that sounds right. You know, I wanted to kind of couple with you and just kind of say we're all thinking of you and we're all rooting for you for Damar Hamlin. So pretty scary scenes, and don't think that's not on our minds as we kind of went through last night and today, and as we kind of go through this podcast. So obviously lovers of football, so really needed to talk about that. The bowl game sometime last week. Sorry, not a very smooth transition, but there can't be. So bowl game last week. Watched all of it. You watched all of it. I think we probably came back pretty unimpressed. That's probably the best word I can say, unimpressed. There wasn't, there were a couple flashes from particular players here and there, especially, the Stephon Johnsons and Ollie Gordons and stuff like that had a couple flashes. Pretty good defensively, I would say. We probably didn't play that poorly defensively. We went up against a senior quarterback who knows the offense and got to play his final game for Wisconsin, I would presume. The part that bothered me the most, it's a bowl game. I told you this when we talked about it. We haven't done a podcast since, but naturally pretty busy around the holidays. The part that bothered me the most is we got out coached by a coach coaching his first game at the school he's going to.
Well, was Luke Fickell coaching Wisconsin?
He was yelling. So if he's yelling,
Okay.
I would presume that he's not just yelling at nobody. I'd be put a paper bag over his face so he can just yell at no one can see him. But
it seemed like an odd move for
those...
the brand new head coach who hasn't yet really been there that long at all and hasn't coached one game yet to be coaching. I feel like he could have passed along a lot of the duties, but I understand what you're saying. I mean, he's on the field with the headset on, so I mean he's doing something. That's for sure.
And even if, let's say, Luke Fickell wasn't making all these decisions, right? We still got out coached by their defensive coordinator. So either way, we're still getting out coached by not a head coach. That was probably just one of the more frustrating parts. It wasn't a pretty game. It wasn't an enjoyable game. I don't think you and I expected it to. I think Stanford Steve said this was probably one of the worst bowl games, given the transfers going out, given there was no quarterbacks. Neither quarterback was returning. And he said, if I were you, I'd bet the under. So I believe all those things hit. Wisconsin covered, I want to say. Is that right? I feel like they did. I feel like it was like 3.5, 4.5, maybe higher to 6. I don't know. Somewhere in that range, some like NFL spread like. So yeah, it just wasn't it wasn't a very good game. It wasn't a game that I necessarily, I don't want to say cared about. I guess probably just wanted to see a little bit more, want to see a little more risks, and we just didn't really get that, which isn't surprising with a my gunny coach team. So, did you? I mean, do you have any? I know there's just not much to talk about with the game, and it kind of just went like this through my head. Just oh, there it is, and it's gone, and that was
So
kind of it.
I was trying to pull some stats up on my phone, basically, just because it was unimpressive.
Yeah,
It was not depressing. It was like, oh, that's kind of what I expected to have happened, where we make it look close in the end, 7-point game. But we don't do much the whole game to like really
yeah,
make us feel good about it. We don't. Granted, Gunnar Gundy's the other quarterback who could have played, but he couldn't have played because, from my understanding, he was having surgery, which
hmm
hopefully he recovers well. Of course, we don't wish anything bad on anyone. But then again, we have
absolutely.
a 4-star quarterback who's a true freshman starting us in a bowl game. You put all those words together and you're like, well, I mean, what you expect. This
Sure.
is just not what I expected because this is his 4th start. I think his 4th game, definitely 3rd start at least. And it's against a Wisconsin team that's honestly pretty average and is really depleted as well. Do I think Spencer Sanders would have fared better and maybe helped us win the game? You know what? Yeah, if he's healthy, for sure.
Yeah.
But also, if he's transferring out, which we'll get to later on here too, like I mean, at this point, I'd rather see more Rangel than more Sanders because I kind of know what you get with Sanders.
Right.
Defensively, I feel like Derek Mason did a good enough job to win a game in the Big 12 or to win a game, period.
Yeah.
We held them to 24 points and we kept it seemingly close the whole game. They, at the end, were running out the clock, but that's what they're going to do when that's the position, they're in basically at the end of the day, right? Like, we could have gotten the ball back one more time. Awesome. It did irk me a little bit at the very, very end that they were running like a bootleg, trying to like really score one more. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? You won the game. We all know you
That
won the
was
game.
that
That
was
was weird.
dumb. It was just dumb because someone could genuinely get hurt. Like I
Yeah.
think that was my
Now,
thing. Like someone could have gotten hurt.
for sure. And now, to say your point here about the senior quarterback, that was like the guy had only thrown 6 passes the whole year until playing in the game
Right.
because their actual quarterback transferred out before
Yeah.
the bowl game, just like our actual quarterback transferred out.
Right.
Main difference is that they were not playing a true freshman. We were playing a true freshman quarterback.
Right.
Also main difference that their senior quarterback was not a 4-star. Our guy was a 4-star. So for all these people who want to say, well, Gundy never gets 5 stars, he should be proud of it, et cetera, or you know what, Gundy does so much developing with 2 and 3 stars getting better. Rangel's a 4-star, and he just doesn't look like he's a 5-star. Now, granted, he probably wasn't taking any first-team reps during the offseason because he's just got on campus. Probably isn't really taking a lot of first-team reps during the season either, just because Sanders would be until he went injured. So I'm willing to give Rangel a lot of slack here. But the main thing overall that I come back to repeatedly about this bowl game is that bowl games are a great way to either feel better or worse about your program going forward. They're
Yeah.
either like they're a book into the season. It's a great way to feel good and optimistic or feel bad and down.
Unless you play before National Signing Day,
That's
you get a good recruiting class.
Yeah.
Which we didn't do. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The main thing here is that the difference in the Fiesta Bowl we played in was an awesome feeling. It's a Spencer Sanders coming back from being down. We held Notre Dame to only 35 points. We scored 37. We've got a logo too. There's momentum. There's all this stuff going for Oklahoma State football heading into the offseason. This was the last offseason. This bowl game, after it's over, it's like, man, can we keep Ollie Gordon from transferring? Can we keep some of these other guys from transferring? Because it's sadly a real thought. And the year difference in how I feel about bowl games after they happen is just horrible. It's just a horrible difference.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be too traumatic here, too dramatic or whatever, but it's just not a great feeling. My dad said it really well too, or just he normally is not the guy to be like down about the Oklahoma State program, but he's like, what are we looking forward to next year? Like what are we hoping
Yeah.
for? And the key thing is I'm over there talking about, hey, Brennan Armstrong. That's what I'm trying to get hyped about, which we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get hyped about like several of these other guys or players or, oh, you know what? Maybe Derek Mason's second year, he'll figure it out more, whatever. Just I don't put a lot of. Are you putting a lot of stock into that?
No.
Like hope for next year? Like what's the hopeful things for next year though?
I mean, I guess we can go kind of bypass this game a little bit, but today the news broke that John Paul Richardson entered the transfer portal, and that was probably an hour or so ago.
Mhm.
And there's also been swirlings that Spencer might be coming back, that he's reached back out to the program. And then there's the Brennan Armstrong stuff, but apparently he was between us and Wisconsin, but now Wisconsin has gotten two transfer quarterbacks, one of them coming from OU. And then is Tanner Mordecai the other one?
I think so. Well, I think so. I think Mordecai's the other one, which is too funny.
Which is
Previous
funny.
OU quarterback who transferred to SMU, who now transferred to Wisconsin.
Well, and I saw OSU fans saying, "Oh, well, we should get Tanner Mordecai," and I'm like, I don't know. I'm okay, thank you though. Like I'd rather have Spencer Sanders than Tanner Mordecai, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. So transfer portal stuff. We kind of hit on this on our previous podcast because outside of some of the other stuff, hasn't really changed. Presley is going to Tulsa, which I think we all find kind of interesting, but also maybe not that interesting given if you go look at his 247 page and see some of his other offers. Not saying he wasn't a good player, but we were probably maybe not by far, but we were his best offer. And his was there, so probably didn't take too much convincing. Mason Cobb's going to USC. For going to OU. I don't know if we really want to talk about that. It just doesn't really. It is what it is. I mean, how many games has he played the last 2 years? He's been hurt so much that we've missed him, that he hasn't been on the field more than it's been beneficial when he is on the field. Right?
Yeah, I did see one OSU fan, I can't remember the name, tweet out, "Oh no, what will we do now? We're missing a player who had 1 sack last year." It's a good point. I mean, Trace Ford was a first round NFL draft prospect his like freshman sophomore year, and he hasn't been able to stay on the field to really fulfill that dream. So if he feels like he can fulfill it with OU or get drafted or whatever, hey, good for you, man. Like I'm not gonna be. Am I annoyed that a guy transfers to the in-state rival? Yeah, annoyed, but I think that's the best way to say it is annoyed. Like,
Yeah.
Crap, he transferred to OU. Will I be annoyed if he sacks us in the Bedlam game next year? For sure, yeah, because it's like, oh man, that guy was on our team and now he's healthy for the full season. Of course, he is healthy when he
Yeah.
transfers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Am I annoyed about like, oh, I bet like we trained him up to be really good and we helped him always get back from injury as a program, spent time doing that, whatever. Sure, but that's what you're gonna do. Like that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna I mean like these
Right.
at the end of the day, like these are kids that we're talking about. Myself as a 29-year-old, I'm not gonna say kid a lot when talking about college players because if Austin, however you say his last name, Ayun, however, North Texas kid, he's 29. We're the same age. We graduated high school the same year. So if he decides to transfer to Oklahoma State or wherever, then why am I saying kid? Because he's the same age as me. He's playing college football.
Yeah.
Point being is that these guys, you're always going to try to do the best for them and the best by them so that you can always get the best players. It is a selfish thing. I'm sorry. It's not altruistic like, oh, we want to make sure we do right by Trace Ford so that karma will always be good to us, etc. No, that's what you do. You do it. You do it till you don't get these guys anymore, and then all of a sudden, where's your program at? So, you know what?
Yeah.
Like all the OSU fans mad that Trace left. Mad, annoyed, sure. But if you're mad and annoyed to the point that you don't that you do something on social media at all, any tweet about it, whether it's at him or at anyone or just to yourself. Fine to be annoyed, but you know what? That's what it is. It's an annoyance and move on. It's like a blip. You got
Yeah,
like, I knew he's going to transfer and he's gone. And the kind of the same thing with Mason Cobb. Kind of the same thing with wherever. Jabbar Muhammad transferred to Washington. Kind of same thing deal there. The one that's an in-state rival is very annoying. But you know what? It's like okay. I
I'm
mean,
I'm
it's
pretty
just whatever.
I'm pretty annoyed anytime a multiple year starter transfers within conference to another team. That's just kind of how I feel about it, whether OSU's involved or not. Um, like the Kevin McCullough one, transferring to Kansas from Texas Tech in basketball. The dude's been at Tech for like 6 years, and then he gets to transfer to Kansas. Like that just feels wrong. That feels wrong. That feels really wrong. So, and not to mention he hit the game-winning three, whatever. However, this dude has eligibility left is ridiculous. Or tying, not winning. But you get the point.
I know what you mean. Yeah, no,
I
I
just
got you.
I I don't like interconference transferring. It's just it's not my favorite. Um, I think it's different if like, oh, you've got a kid from Texas who goes to West Virginia and then transfers to like Tech. I mean, you're talking like 2,000 miles or whatever it is. But I mean, Trace Ford's transferring what, 60 miles down the street, and
I
he's
mean,
from in between
90, but
there.
I'm being
You know,
specific. Yeah.
yeah, like so. I don't know. That one just I'm like this with any transfers, and if you go back and listen, I brought it up on multiple podcasts that I don't like interconference transferring with immediate eligibility. That's that's just I'm all for transferring. I'm all for the transfer portal, but um, yeah, it's just not a fan. Not a fan.
I'd say this too. The questions that I'd have for everyone is if Trace Ford transferred to Kansas
Sure.
and had 4 sacks against us and we won the game by 10 next year. Or the exact same thing happens. He transfers to OU, he has 4 sacks against us, and we beat OU by 10. Are you going to care that Trace Ford transferred? No. Care about winning and losing, care about winning the Big 12, move on. Right? Like, are we going to, if we play USC in the national championship next year, are we going to care that Mason Cobb transferred to the other school? Probably if he beats us. But guess what? There's 10 other guys who are probably going to try to help him beat us. So we got to do our
Yeah.
best, I mean, if the same thing happens vice versa and Tanner Mordecai or whoever the other OU quarterback who transferred to Wisconsin is, or any OU kid that's been on the roster for even half a second transfers to us. Like if Dylan Gabriel enters the transfer portal tomorrow and says I'm transferring to OSU, are we going to be like, oh, we don't want him? No. So get out of here.
Right.
Like listen to your lame
Right.
ass and move on. You know? So
Yeah.
that's what I say on that. We got to talk about the playoffs though a little bit too.
Yep.
So the
Got a
Ohio State
lot to
kicker,
take. Got a lot of for these Big Ten fans.
man, I feel bad for him because that happened right at midnight. 50 yards. He makes it. He's a hero. He loses. He misses it. It's really a tough field goal. It's 50 yards and you're a college kicker. Like some of these guys are not on scholarship or not on full scholarship until their senior year. So it's a tough deal overall. Mike Leach had the quote, which RIP Mike Leach, of course, but had the deal where he grabbed a kicker from the stands at a Texas
Yeah.
Tech game and like told him to come try out. So for the Ohio State kicker, like I feel bad. But Ohio State's a team. No, you got an extra chance that you shouldn't have, to be honest. You should not you lost to Michigan and Michigan got in. If anything at this point, it should be like all right, who was the ACC winner? Oh, they also lost a couple games. Okay, who was the Pac-12 winner? Okay, they also lost a couple games. Like, all right, I guess you can't make it in. I mean, no one's going to be able to tell me that USC should have gotten in because they lost to Tulane yesterday. But, like, I don't feel bad for Ohio State as a whole.
Yeah,
I don't feel bad for Michigan either. Michigan, that game is bizarre, by the way. Michigan tries to run the Philly special from 4th and 1 instead of just punching at the running back. And then they do the same thing later on. Like, what? Ugh.
I'm gonna go ahead and start just getting into this because Ohio State, you kind of blew it. That's how I feel about it. They want to complain about targeting. There's a lot of Big Ten fans complaining about penalties between Michigan and Ohio State when those teams get every single call throughout the year. Go ask Brett Bielema what he thinks about Michigan allegedly getting hosed by the referees. Okay. I mean, they got to block 20 yards downfield on a 4th and 6 screen or whatever. They threw it beyond the line of scrimmage and they're blocking downfield and the rest didn't even blink. So save it. You gave up, was it 52, 51, 50, 52, 51.
Mm-hmm.
You gave up
points.
50. Yeah, you gave up 50 plus points coming in as a top 5 defense in the country. I heard Ryan Russillo say this, and I completely disagree with him. He said, teams have bad games defensively. I can agree with that. And he said, but this doesn't take away from Michigan's defensive prowess. It does, in my opinion. It does. It just does.
Didn't play any all season. Am I summing your thing up into two words? Because I'm sorry if I am, but it's true.
It's true. And if you go look at their schedule, and also I checked the total defense statistics. I was just curious because I was at the Holiday Bowl between North Carolina and Oregon, and I want to see how bad North Carolina's defense was, and it's bad. It's not as bad as OSU's or OU's, but it's bad. Yeah. This is total defense I'm going off of. So Michigan was top 5. Yeah. Michigan was top 5 in total defense. Air Force was number 1, which it can be explained why they're number 1. It's because they hold on to the ball so long that the other team doesn't have the chance to get it because they run the triple option. Whatever. And I'm sure they also have a really good defense. I want to say they have a guy that's potentially getting drafted into the NFL, not the military. There's a bunch of stuff on the law about that that we're not going to get into. The other 4 teams in the top 5 are all from the Big Ten.
What does that tell you?
And sure, do they have good defenses? Yes. But TCU just completely shredded you. And by the way, Oklahoma State had a worse than 100 out of 130, whatever, total defense. And we held TCU to 37 points in overtime.
Well, one thing I'd add, we didn't hold them to 43 points. They won 43-40.
Was it 43? I thought it was 37.
Either way, I don't think you're wrong. In saying that the Big Ten is not good defensively. The other thing I'd say here too is that when you're a school and you are made fun of nationally for being bad at offense, it should also carry a little bit over to the conference. And I think you know this is what I'm talking about. And it's the Iowa Hawkeyes. It was literally a joke nationally because I follow enough people from ESPN, The Ringer, Bleacher Report, whatever, The Athletic, etc., talking about how that Iowa, hey, bet the under when I was playing. Bet the under when I was playing because he can't score. They have to be close. So when you're known as a school who can't score, but somehow you're still winning enough games to make it to a bowl game, did I say that right about Iowa?
Yeah.
Then maybe your whole conference should be brought into question how good the offense is. Maybe, right? Like, I get the points for and points against, but the points for and points against is really, really good for fantasy football. It is
Sure.
really, really bad for, and really good for non-conference comparisons against like teams. It's really bad
The
for, hey, I wonder what the points against is for all of the Big 10 teams versus all the Big 12 teams. It's like, well,
it,
clearly, stylistically, they play different. You
yeah.
match them up against the SEC when the SEC and Alabama were scoring 6 and 3 in a game and winning. I mean, that Alabama LSU game from 10 years ago in 2011, I believe that game was all field goals. So if you look at those
It was
years,
nine
points
to
for and
six.
points against,
It was 9-6, I think, in overtime.
yeah, like somebody realized at some point, man, these games really suck to watch and coach. We can
Yeah.
win them, but they really suck to watch and coach because if something doesn't go right for us and we're Alabama and our field goal kicker doesn't make a 38-yarder, that should be makeable by almost all field goal kickers to the D1 level, but isn't always true, then what can we do? And Alabama went, you know what? Let's go get Calvin Ridley. Let's go get playmakers.
Right.
Let's do something
Right.
about this. Let's not just have basically Derrick Henry run over everyone and Mark Ingram run through everyone, or vice versa, and then kick field goals.
And this is a couple other things. The people want to say, oh, well, there were 2 pick sixes, right? True. 2 pick sixes. After Sonny Dykes went on the media press tour before this and said, we're going to make J.J. McCarthy throw the ball. And then all the Michigan fans come calling, get up in arms. Well, that's exactly what we want. Shut up. Because if you are a Big Ten fan, especially a Michigan fan, you don't get to have a double standard about this. You don't get to have a double standard when, and they said it on the broadcast, when the second best offense you played this year was Purdue. Okay?
Who scored
You don't get to
7 against South, by
7.
the way.
7.
I don't care what their
You don't.
opt-outs were. You can't score 7
Nope.
in a bowl game and tell me you're good at offense. Ever.
Nope. You don't get to have a double standard about this when the Big 12 is constantly harped on about how we don't play defense. Even when Oklahoma State has a top 5 defense, like last year, against traditionally and always good offenses, people still say, oh, the Big 12 doesn't play defense. So it doesn't matter. Watching TCU just completely smoke the hell out of them had to have been so vindicating for so many Big 12 fans. And I think that's why so many Big 12 fans were just like, no, we're going for TCU. We might not like TCU. We might hate Fort Worth. TCU might have smoked us during the regular season. We didn't care. We wanted TCU to score and score a lot because this is what we deal with every time. Every single year. And in my opinion, if your calling card is offense, if your calling card is defense, like Michigan is, and you get 52 points dropped on you through your 1-6 bowl game record under Jim Harbaugh, after all that garbage that you talked coming up before saying, oh, is TCU in the Big 12? Okay. This is what you get. This is what you get. A couple other things. Michigan fans want to say that it was targeting on the last play. Sorry, your running back can't throw the ball forward. Doesn't matter if he's behind the line of scrimmage. Doesn't matter. That's illegal. That's an illegal forward pass. Number 2, was the wide receiver down at the goal line on their opening score?
I to be clear, I think it was a touchdown. Just
So
from
do I.
watching it several times. I think he didn't have possession of it until he got into the end zone. They had possession in the end zone. for the fact for them to be down at the goal line and then the next play for them to not do the same thing with the running back. Is that what you're getting at?
Yep.
I'll let you go.
Yeah, because in my eyes, it's more egregious that they overturned it. I think that was my thing. And if you watch it objectively, you can kind of see, oh, I guess I see how they would get there. But if you're saying that in your head, then it probably should be overturned, right? If you're like, oh, I guess I see that, then it shouldn't be overturned, because in order to overturn something, as we know, it needs to be objective. And it wasn't. Cry me a river, don't fumble on the 1 yard line because you want to hand the ball off to your linebacker turned fullback for like his third carry of the year. Don't
And now hand to
fumble
your running back who's guiding you here.
or run a quarterback sneak. Like, I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad. So all this to say, Michigan, you guys complained that TCU didn't play a non-conference schedule, saying they played like Tarleton State and yada yada yada. Neither did you, but not only did you not play a non-conference schedule, you also didn't play a conference schedule. Because I know you can't, control who's in your conference, but you can control who you play out of conference. And if you want respect from everybody else as the number one winning program of all time and all that garbage, play people. Play people. Because you know who does? Ohio State.
That's fair. That's fair. One point I want to make on this, just in regards to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
When someone asks me about the future of the Big 12, I get really hopeful because of the Big Ten. Because all of a sudden, and I think you know what I'm getting at, we can look like we have an awesome season when we really don't. Because instead, it can look like we have an awesome season, but it can really be that we played Kansas, K-State, UCF, Houston, trying to come up with the rest here. But, when there are 12 teams, you have to make alignments in the conference. So you can't have everyone play each other. You just can't. And when that happens, the conference does become a little bit easier. It doesn't become weaker, to be clear, because you still have to play that championship game against the other side. The other side might be just as good, or the other side might be the Big Ten West and be horrible. But you can have the differences every year, and you can have the years where Oklahoma State could finally get all the way there, right? You could finally have the years that you can get through, because why be anything but optimistic about Oklahoma State football? Why be down in the dumps? Why be, oh, this sucks or whatever? I wish we could figure it out, etc. And why not instead just go, you know what? We got a shot. We got a shot here. To really get through the conference, because there's going to be a year. It may not be in the first 5 years of the new Big 12, maybe in the first 10, though, I hope at least, where Iowa State will come out of nowhere and they'll be playing us and we'll be undefeated and they'll be undefeated. And all of a sudden that will be the biggest game of our year instead of at Ohio State, Michigan, right? And then we beat Iowa State. We go play the championship game. We end up throttling whoever played in the championship game because it ends up being like, I don't know, UCF or, Texas Tech, or I don't know how they'd map out here, right? That's what I'm hopeful here, is that you can lose teams when you have such a big conference that people can't keep track of who all's in it. When legitimately the other day Maryland played in a bowl game, do you know who they played? What's up your head?
Who?
American's bowl game. They played, I want to say South Carolina, but they definitely played an ACC team.
Who is this? Maryland? Is that
Maryland.
what you said? I'll double check. But
and it took me a minute to realize Maryland wasn't in the same conference. That's when you know it's bad.
They played NC State.
And I was like, wait, they're not in the same conference? Why is this a bowl game? Isn't this a regular season matchup? So that's when we can all tell.
Yeah.
That's when we all can tell. Myself as an avid football watcher couldn't go, wait, hang on a second. What's going on here?
I'm
It's
gonna,
just
yeah, and the Big Ten, especially the Big Ten West, seemingly isn't getting worse. Um, Especially obviously with the additions of USC and UCLA, but the coaching changes are definitely going to provide some very interesting things at Nebraska, at Wisconsin, obviously, that we just talked about with Luke Fickell. Purdue, Illinois seems to be getting better, I would say. The Big Ten East is still atrocious outside of Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Michigan State kind of remains to be seen what's happening there, but Rutgers, Maryland, Indiana? I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? I also found a list of the points that Michigan has given up in their recent bowl games. They have lost 6 consecutive bowl games, and they won. The only bowl game they won under Harbaugh was his first year against Florida. They won 41-7.
nice. I mean, it's good. It's a good win.
It's a good win. Since then, they lost to Florida State, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, TCU. Obviously, with the last 2 years having been in the playoff. This is the point total starting with TCU. 51, 34, 35, 41, 26, 33. In their last 6 bowl games, teams that they're playing out of conference are averaging close to 35 points probably.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to call a defense good when you're statistically in the top in all defense when you play in conference, and then you go play out of conference and people put up points on you.
Well, I had an affinity for Michigan. There's just lived in the state. Was like, oh, who do I decide to like either way? You know.
Mm-hmm.
It's seemingly gone down. I wish I'd gone to the game at the Big House when I was there. And I lived in Michigan. I really wish I'd gone to Michigan State and Ohio State game and just taken advantage of all the opportunities there. Pay could have been increased a little bit to make that actually a possibility for me, though, at the previous job. But I shouldn't have said that. Point being, I really don't care too much. If you're a Michigan fan, awesome. Respect to you, great. But you gotta look at what is true. And the Michigan fans that I liked, that I hung out with at work and whatever all type of stuff, they're great people. And honestly, yep, we may not be this group. We may not be the best. We may not, whatever it is, etc. Here. We may not be just killing it. They knew it.
Yeah.
It's the ones that are delusional. The ones that are like, no, if we got to play Georgia, we'd kill him. It's like, no, you wouldn't,
Hey,
So,
and coming from a fan base that has a lot of delusional fans, I call them like I see them. It's nothing against you, Michigan. I'm just well
are
aware
we the
how to
delusional
spot it
fans?
out.
Is Oklahoma State?
There
Are
are
Oklahoma
a
State
lot of
delusional fans? Are we
delusional.
getting at here?
There are a lot of Oklahoma State delusional fans. Yes.
All right. Well, I think that is true at this point. I'm not going to argue that at all. It's I gotta say though, there are enough Oklahoma State fans that I know feel the same way here. And I think we just got to take a second here to touch on this because it's been now covered in an article. Barry Trammell?
Yeah, Barry Trammell. Good guy, cool guy.
Famously messed up the date and to come visit one of my classes and got there 1 week after he was supposed to. And it was the funniest time because it was one of our professors who really thought he was going to show up 1 week. He did not. Professor did not have anything ready to go because, I mean, you think you're having a guest lecture and then you don't. Like, what do you have prepared? Honestly, would have been the same boat. Shows up the next week and he's like, oh, Barry Trammell's here. Gotta hear from him. You know, like, what are we going to do?
Pushed it back.
Yeah. Shout out to Ted. So
Barry Trammell's a very nice guy, though. Like,
Barry Trammell's a very,
almost-
very nice guy. He got his weeks mixed up, or the professor got his weeks mixed up. Either way, it was a great time. He wrote an article that came out, I think, today about
Yeah.
our good friend of the CGA Tour program, the CEO and owner of Pistols Firing, Marshall Scott, and someone we had on the previous podcast that all three of us were on together. One, and I just want to say this because I'm not trying to make every podcast 5 hours. You know, we'll probably cap this one an hour here. But I just want to say, Mike Gundy's an idiot. I don't have any problem saying that. After that press conference where Marshall is asking a fair question that all of the Oklahoma State fan base is curious about, that he is coming from basis, and Barry Trammell put it honestly in a great spot here. You know, I mean, honestly, just a great spot overall. Is how in the world could a guy who is an Oklahoma State fan not understand that fans are going to have questions, right?
Right.
Like, how does this, you know?
Yeah, and
So Marshall's in the right. I don't think you and I disagree on that, but that's kind of how it is.
yeah, and Marshall, he came out with a statement which I thought was very noble of him to do. I don't think he necessarily had to, but knowing him and having him on the podcast, I think it doesn't really surprise me that he did because that's just the kind of person that he is. He asked a very, I don't want to call it trivial, but it just wasn't. It was a question that I'm sure gets asked to coaches around the country that probably have a down season pretty frequently. Are there going to be any coaching changes? Marshall acknowledged that it potentially could have been just poor timing for the question, which is honestly the only knock that I might have on if I did have one at all. Just hey, maybe, that would be it. But like other people have pointed out and like you pointed out, when else was he going to be able to ask this question? That's kind of case in point there. So when else were they going to be available to the media, right? We don't really know that. Marshall would, I'm sure, be able to answer that question a little bit better than we would. That was just a very defensive, childish, and just a kind of flat rude thing to say, and pretty hypocritical. I don't want to come up with too many negative words here. I think people get the idea. But I mean, to call Marshall an ass and threaten his livelihood is just pretty hypocritical given what the question was about, saying I'm going to revoke your credentials and then go into the whole bit about, well, these people have families and yada, yada, yada. And, you could tell Jason Taylor and Brendan Presley look really uncomfortable up there. I mean, all you have to do is say, we evaluated at the end of the year like we do every year. That's it. That's it. And I know you and I come on here, especially me, come on here and harp on Gundy probably a little bit more than Robert Allen does. But this this to me, it I feel like it almost just keeps happening where I want him to win me back over. And not just me. I don't just mean me, but I mean the fan base. Because he is losing touch. He is losing the touch that he had with that fan base, the charisma that he used to have. It's just not there anymore. And I don't know if it reeks of somebody who knows that he's not going to get fired or complacency or whatever it is, but it's just we all have friends who started to act like this. Maybe their relationship goes sour or, something and they start treating people like crap, but that's kind of just what this seems like. It seems like maybe he doesn't have a good relationship with somebody on the staff or the AD or the president or whatever. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's his wife. That's not what I'm saying. But, just relationships within the program. And he's kind of led on this whole year that there's no reason that we have to feel necessarily as comfortable as we have in the past. Would you say that all of those things are fair to say about the program?
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I I think Gundy has been a really great ambassador for the program for a while, but it is seemingly withering on how
Yeah.
great of an ambassador. I think he's gone from being one of the best guys we could hope to have around Oklahoma State with the wrestling singlet on and the Big Daddy mug and making him basically not being afraid to make a meme of himself repeatedly over and over and over, right?
Yeah. Or
But
just have fun.
but now
To be
it's
frank,
to a
like just
point,
have fun.
or just have fun. Do all those ESPN car washes, get Oklahoma State on a big national stage, right? But there's been some stuff that we've noticed that have just been a little odd. When we had Justin Southwell on it, I think he touched on this a little bit too. Who's a guy who played on the 2011 team. And I shouldn't say guy, he's a wide receiver who played on the 2011 team. It's just what? Okay, I didn't phrase that in my best way possible.
Yeah. I just thought it was funny.
I should have phrased that better. But either way, I think the way that Oklahoma State has respected previous players has gone much better, but it took a little bit longer to get there than you would have thought. And with all that being said, Gundy's driving the ship here. He's driving the car. He is piloting us down the road. He is doing all type of stuff, right? What he's not doing, though, is answering a ton of questions, and he almost never really has. He's not answering a ton of questions about Oklahoma State. He's not answering a ton of questions about his sons and their and their potential college lives or whatever, etc. That anyone would just be curious about because the guy has been an Oklahoma State lifer. I mean, he's played for Oklahoma State, played for in the best years in Oklahoma State before he got to Oklahoma State. Then he coached Oklahoma State through the best years that Oklahoma State's ever seen, etc.
Yeah.
And he seemingly is one of the more reserved guys, media-wise, you could ever talk to, at least from an aspect of how much access other institutions have, especially ones that are not ESPN or the Oklahoman or the athletics office.
Yeah.
So, with all that being said, I think he needs a little bit more some PR help than anyone had thought previously. And he also sounds like a guy who was raised in Midwest City, Oklahoma in the 70s and 80s. And that's kind of what's going on.
Is it PR help or does he need a wake up call? Or is it
Well,
both?
I think I'm saying the same thing you are, and I think we're using different words.
Okay.
To be honest. Right? PR help / wake up call, I think, is almost the same thing in my eyes. Because PR help in my eyes is hey, dude, this is a wake up call. You're not great at PR,
Yeah.
right? You're not great at this. You probably thought you were a year and you're not.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. You know, that's where we're at here at the end of the day.
I I think the the interesting part to me is when, when we play, I usually I'll go on the Reddit threads and stuff like that and just kind of I'll see what people are saying, and if I feel like having fun, maybe I'll throw some comments in there or whatnot. Um there were a lot of people mentioning the fact that Gundy didn't look like he cared. And to me, if
That's fair.
some
I mean, that's a
s-
fair point. I don't think that's unfair.
and if some guy with a, you know, Washington State flair or a Georgia flair or whatever looks at it and says, "Wow, that guy really looks like he doesn't care." What do you think the fans think? Because if they notice it, we watch every game.
Not yeah, not yeah, I mean not I mean, honestly, man, I gotta say, I kind of hate talking about this because Gundy's not good at it. It doesn't look great for our program. I don't it's an uncomfortable conversation a little bit because it's like this dude should know how he's being portrayed at all times.
Yeah.
When you and I are on calls, when I'm doing this, I'm like, I know I'm being watched. I know that I will edit this, so I'll put it up on YouTube. It will present my face. There have been several podcasts where I've been looking down my phone while you've been talking before. It's not like a great look for me. I know how that is overall. Now, most of the
Mhm.
time, for me at least, I'm looking up stats or asking people, or I'm texting you, hey, let's move on to this next segment. Gundy, on the other hand, could be doing a variety of different things, but you got to look like you at least care. We know you're being watched. He knows he's being watched, you know,
Mhm.
right?
And
He knows he's being
a-
watched.
and again, that's why I don't want to say he doesn't care, because I don't think that's true, and I think he does care, but I think it's just there's so much complacency in whether he hates the times, or he doesn't like the transfer portal, and he doesn't like this, and he doesn't like that. And it's at some point like, what about this do you enjoy? Because if all it is like coaching your kids, then that tells me you're kind of on the way out. Because all credit to
And
him,
that may just be very true.
and that may just be true. But you don't want to take all of these gigantic steps forward with this program just to shoot it in the foot on your way out. Because that's where we're getting.
Yeah. Well, you know what we got to talk about, though? We got to talk about Brennan Armstrong or Spencer Sanders before
Yep.
we end it out. Because at this
Yep.
point, I'm with you on Gundy. There's just not much I think that's going to happen. Potential coaching changes. I don't see really much happening.
I agree.
I think it's going to kind of be the same, right? So I kind of want to ask you, who would you, I think we touched on it earlier a little bit. You'd rather have Brennan or Spencer?
I would rather have Brennan Armstrong.
Okay. Okay.
And the reason being, and we've talked about this previously,
Yeah.
um, about, and you've highlighted this really well about how you don't necessarily think that Spencer fits um, what Gundy or whoever is, the offense, basically what the offense is trying to do. And I think that's true. And the other part, he's pretty injury prone. He's pretty injury prone.
Yeah.
And this is the final thing with Oklahoma State. I don't think, given all that we've talked about, I don't think shakeups are necessarily a bad thing. Would you rather run it back with Spencer and go 7-6 again, or let Brennan Armstrong go out and spin it and just see what happens?
Or what's my other option? Do I have one?
The team that played Wisconsin.
I would rather.
Pass Young.
I would rather have. I'd rather have Grayson McCall. I don't know. I would rather. I'd rather have Brennan Armstrong, honestly, because we've seen Spencer Sanders now in the Oklahoma State system for however many years. And once it's the game of the season, I'm going to be going, is he going to be okay?
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
every hit, on every single hit he takes, I'm going to be like, oh, is he okay? Honestly, after the 5th game of the season now, and I wish nothing but the best for that dude. I think he represents the university extremely well, but all the way leading up until Bedlam of last year, I was like on the fence. Then Bedlam last year comes and goes, and I'm like, well, he's the guy. You know what? We won Bedlam. As you know how I feel about Bedlam. Bedlam is almost the Super Bowl for Oklahoma State fans every year because it's like the game of will we be okay or will we not? How good is this team? It's the true measuring bar is Bedlam on if this is a good season or not. And we won Bedlam, then we won the Fiesta Bowl with him. I was like, oh man, this is awesome. Then the TCU game happens, and I'm like, wait, what? How do we lose this? Then the next week, we lose to K-State 49-0. And he's the starting quarterback for the first half. And it's much more of a question of, wait, what in the world is going on? Then he plays for what seems like no time at all, but I think was almost a whole quarter against Iowa State, if I have that right. And we win that game. And it's like, wait a second. So can he play or can he not?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, it's like, something's up.
Yeah. I would just probably like to see, I just want something new. And I don't necessarily think that Brennan Armstrong is a world beater. This year he was really bad, but Virginia was also really bad. Virginia was 3-7 this year, and I think he ultimately, I don't know if he got benched or just pulled or what. Virginia also obviously dealt with some pretty tragic stuff this year that I don't want to take away from because I can't imagine how that affects football players. But Brennan Armstrong was also in 2021, he passed for over 4,000 yards and he had 31 touchdowns and 10 picks. I have to imagine that he probably lost some dudes at the receiver position. He also lost Jelani Woods, as we know, because he was throwing the ball to him.
Good player.
Which I'm sure helped. Yeah. Good player. Who would have thought? Which I'm sure helped. I would just like to see a shakeup at this point. And again, like you said, nothing against Spencer. But it's, again, those are rumors, but it's just hard to imagine like we run back whatever we had last year and think that it's going to be better. Is that fair to say?
Totally.
Like it's hard to.
No,
it's hard
I
to.
think that's. Yeah.
It just. I don't want to point blame, but it's almost like I don't know with this program who is at fault anymore. Because a lot of stuff has seemed like it's gone downhill since we were in college. Yeah. Because I mean, realistically, if we don't have Jim Knowles last year, what are we looking at?
I mean, 6-7.
Not a Fiesta Bowl. Not a Fiesta Bowl.
Maybe 8-4. I don't know. Could have a 10-win season still, but yeah, not a Fiesta Bowl game.
Yeah, I think just probably objectively that roster was better than this year's roster. But
It has to be, but still, it's a weird deal because our identity for so long had been offense, then our identity for like last year was defense, and then our identity this year was honestly I have no idea because our starting
we had
quarterback
a good
who was
kicker
yeah, that's true.
and good punters. I mean, I'm being serious, but I'm also kind of joking at the same time. You know, it just I don't know if it's a Gundy thing. I don't know if it's a Dunn thing. I don't know if it was a Jurisic thing. I don't know who it is, but I'll bring back to what I heard on Russillo again today, and Trent Dilfer was talking, and he said, "I'm starting to learn that the head coach's job is to hire even better people around him."
Ooh, that's a
And
good one. I honestly I like Dilfer
I like Dilfer. He's
for
kind
that.
of a hardo sometimes, but I think that quote kind of reminded me of this because we all sit here and all we do is blame the assistant coaches. Not we, but people. Just blame the assistant
Yeah.
coaches, blame the assistant coaches. Um, and, I mean, Alabama, you would have thought the sky was falling this year. Is anybody calling for Saban? No. No. And I know that's a little bit different, but it's good coaches hire good coaches. It's like hurt people hurt people. Good coaches hire good coaches. And I don't know when the last time that we really stuck by that, because I just feel like we got away from it. Casey Dunn was at the staff. He's been on the staff since what, 2011, 2010?
Yeah.
And people are asking to bring Todd Monken back. You have got to be potentially one of the least intelligent people if you think Todd Monken would leave Georgia to come to Oklahoma State for the same position.
But can I say this? I also want him
Sure.
back.
Yeah, duh. But I'm not
But
going to
you know
go
what I
put
mean?
it out
But
on.
like,
I'm not going to go put it out on social media. Todd Monken, Oklahoma State. Shut up. You're an idiot. Like,
while I
just,
do get your point, I think the other point is there too of like, if Todd Monken was offered the head coach job at Oklahoma State, would he take it or would he stay where he's at? Head coach.
I feel like he'd probably stay.
So you saying that and being from the state of Georgia
Yeah.
says all we need to know.
Yeah. I feel like he'd probably stay. And I think that's probably more so he probably got calls last year to be a head coach. He's going to get calls this year to be a head coach. He's had more calls to be a head coach recently. And probably from programs better than Oklahoma State. I just don't think he wants to be one personally. I don't necessarily think it's anything against us. I just think he doesn't want to be one. I mean, could you
I don't
imagine
think he wants to be one at this point. Like if you're Luke Fickell, you chose a great jumping off point. You went to Wisconsin before Cincinnati joined the Big 10. Excuse me, Cincinnati joined the Big 12, and you kind of saw like the plan, like the roadmap. Like, okay, I lost Desmond Ritter the year before. We did make it to a championship game, yada yada, etc. Right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. It's just tough, you know?
It
Right?
is. It is. And but you can't just put your finger on one thing, right? You can't.
Mm-mm.
It's not just Gundy. It's not just Dunn. It's not just, people want to say Dickey or Mason or whatever. It's not just one of those things. It's a multitude of things. And that's kind of where we sit. Now we're getting close to time, but are you feeling better about basketball after last night?
Way better. Way better.
Okay.
I think the next podcast is a basketball podcast. I think at this time it's unless we hear some coaching changes out of Oklahoma State football or more transfer news. I think the next podcast are basically basketball. That was a ton of fun. We beat West Virginia. CCA was hobbled for a little bit, but still beat them. There are many pluses to talk about from that West Virginia game that honestly I wish we had more time for. But
of course, since the Big 12 never ends, we've got Texas on Saturday at home. We got jobbed in that Kansas game. But when you go to Fog Allen, it's not like we haven't seen it before.
You're not getting the fairest of calls there in Fog Allen.
Who would have thought?
But you know who knows that the best? Far and away? Bill Self, because he could have left by now. He could have left for another job, and he never leaves. He always stays at Kansas. Why? Because he knows what home he has. He's a smart man. He's an Oklahoma State man. Smart man.
The NCAA
Bill Self
also knows
is
that.
one of the smartest guys, period, because, he is fully aware of what power has when you coach a blue blood. And Bill Self would probably only leave one blood for another one, just like Roy Williams. That's it. That's the only reason why he'd leave. You think if Bill Self gets the Duke job, does he leave?
No.
Gets called about the Duke job. Any job in the entire country in college basketball, does he leave?
No.
So shout out to all the Oklahoma State fans who want Bill Self instead of Mike Boynton, because you just got your answer right there. Honestly, what are we doing? Everyone wants to hear me make some jokes all the time. That's the joke I got. So with all that being said, Jake, thank you so much for being here. The latest episode of CGA Tour podcast. Please, for the love of God, tweet all of your support and love to Boynton, the state head coach, because goodness gracious, he's getting a bad break every 5 seconds. Also, of course, to DeMar Hamlin and the family there who is dealing with their son in the hospital in a very tragic event. And with that being said, please like, share, subscribe, and follow out the CGA Tour podcast. But all that doesn't really matter necessarily at the end of the day. We're all thinking about a Monday Night Football game and what happened in it. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys again soon. Peace.